So good morning to all of you. Today, as part of our discussion on current affairs, we will be looking at one of the most important issues that has come up in recent times. That is migration. So why this is very important for us from examination point of view? It is important because it can be asked in all 4 papers of general studies, and also a very important topic for essay also. In paper 1, it is part of social issues. In paper 2, governance and social issues. In paper 3, disaster management. In paper 4, ethics. Already a case study was asked from this migration. 3 years back a case study was asked from migration. And of course, a very important topic for general essay. And I would be very surprised if they don't ask about migration this year in your essay paper. So what you must remember is that you must understand about this topic from all these dimensions. That is, from the dimension of social issues, from the dimension of political aspects, from that of governance, from that of disaster management, and mostly from ethical point of view also. So let us try to understand all of them. Let us try to understand all these dimensions, analyze them. What did the government do? What it could have done? What it should have done? And more importantly, what it should do in the future. This is what the topic for today. So, as I have mentioned, this migration and migrants, it can be discussed from political perspective, economic perspective, administrative perspective, social perspective, ethical perspective, global perspective, and psychological also. So before discussing about all these perspectives, let us understand what is this migration and how this migration takes place, what are the needs, what are the reasons why it takes place, and what is the impact and all those things. Simple meaning of migration means people moving from one place to another. Very simple. In search of livelihood. In search of livelihood. This is the simple meaning of migration. So why do people move from one place to another place? Why do you want to leave your native place, your hometown? And why do you want to go to those places which you don't know, which are unknown to you, where the culture, customs, traditions, language, everything is different from you? Why do people do that? Why? Because of simple reason, that is livelihood. Livelihood. When they find that the conditions, in their hometowns is not, when the conditions are not good enough for them to survive, good enough for them to develop themselves, good enough for them to sustain themselves for longer periods of time, that is when this migration takes place. And mostly this migration takes place from poor to rich regions. It takes place from poor to rich regions, from underdeveloped to developed, from underdeveloped to developed. This migration takes place. And what we must remember here is that those who are these migrants are much more important for these regions. We might be thinking that these migrants are those people who don't have any kind of livelihood, who don't have any opportunities. That is the reason why they are totally dependent on the mercy of the developed regions. That is the perception among the people. But in reality, it is not the case. These developed regions are as much as in need of these migrants as these underdeveloped regions. If you look at the entire history of human civilization, it is all about migration. It is said that Aryans, they migrated from Iran and Central Asia into India. If you look at India in the ancient times, it is said that Dravidians are the original inhabitants of the land, whereas the Aryans have migrated. There are so many disputes regarding this theory, but we will not go into all those things. But what is certain is that the entire human history, entire civilization can be described in single term: migration. It may be this migration takes place over a period of time. It may be due to environmental factors. Some of those regions might become inhospitable. That is the reason why people are forced to migrate. Some of the rivers would become dry, they become deserts. It becomes difficult for them to continue their livelihood. That is the reason why people migrate. And in the ancient times and going to the medieval times, this migration used to be very less, limited. Why? Because of transportation facilities or lack of it. So the migration used to be less. This migration had become much more pronounced when there has been rapid developments in transportation facilities and communication facilities. It has made these migrants a very important part of development of the societies. Going back, especially after industrial revolution, these European countries were in need of cheap labor. They need this labor to work in their industries, factories. They need this labor to work in their plantation crops. They need this labor to work in low paid jobs. That is the reason why people from African countries, Asian countries, they have been taken to their hometowns to work in those factories. And mostly earlier it was a slave trade in European countries. But coming back here, let us look at the issue from India's perspective. What is this migration and how this migration had evolved over a period of time from India's perspective. Historically, if we see at India, this migration is not a big phenomena or event. Why? Because India was never a single country in its entire history of 5,000 years. And more importantly, why migration did not take place? Because every region in the country is self-sustained, self-sufficiency. As we have mentioned earlier, migration takes place only when the conditions in the hometown become difficult for them to survive. Thanks to the environmental factors. India is a country which has a self-sufficiency. Almost all the regions of the country are self-sufficient. So that is the reason why we don't find much of migration in India. Most of the regions were independent kingdoms, and they used to live in those kingdoms only. There are very few instances of migration. But with the Britishers exploiting the country for more than 200 years, the country had become very poor. And there were certain regions of the country which had developed in spite of the British rule. And after independence, because of the planned economic development which had taken place. As we study, one of the major problems or criticisms against our planning process is that in the name of development, we have only created islands of prosperity in an ocean of poverty. We have only created islands of prosperity in an ocean of poverty. Very few regions of the country were developed at the cost of the rest of the country. Industrial belt like Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka. This is where we find more opportunities for people in terms of employment and livelihood. Thanks to the fact that traditionally these were the places where the industries were developed. We must remember that during the British times, Calcutta used to be the major industrial center. But after independence, due to various political and economic reasons, it had lost its primacy, and it was Bombay that emerged as the most important industrial center in the country. So what happened after independence? As we have said, rest of the country was literally in poverty, and there are very few regions which are prosperous, which can provide employment. And we have seen this migration from these places to these industrial towns and states. Even now also, if we look at it, in the recent migrant crisis, what we can see is that maximum number of migrants were going back to their hometowns from only these states. So coming back here, after 1991, we started liberalizing our economy. When we started liberalizing our economy, again these traditionally industrial states are the ones which benefited out of it. Along with this, you can say this Andhra Pradesh and Telangana combined together. These are the states which have benefited out of liberalization, and because of which again migration had increased in these states. Now continuing with this, during the planning period and also after liberalization, what we see is that this migration is mostly entirely from rural to urban areas. Entirely from rural to urban areas. And after liberalization, this migration has increased. If you go by the census 1991, 2001 and 2011 census, what they have shown is that progressively urban population is increasing. The proportion of urban population in overall population is going up progressively. One of the important reasons for increase in urban population is migration. One of the most important reasons is this migration. Why? Because in rural areas life has become extremely difficult for people. On the other hand, all the modern amenities and facilities are available to people in urban areas. That is the reason why absolute numbers are going up, absolute number of people living in urban areas, and the percentage of growth of urban population is more than that of rural population. On the positive side, what it indicates is that urban areas have become major sources of livelihood for people thanks to rapid industrialization and the development that was taking place. On the negative side, this is much more worrisome. On the negative side, rural areas have become inhospitable, unlivable for people, especially poor people. Especially for poor people. So let us look at both these things. Let us look at the negative aspects here. Why rural areas are losing their charm? Why people are willing to migrate? First and foremost, as all of us know, agriculture. Agriculture has become a burden on farmers. Farming has lost its popularity, prominence. Here I am not only talking about the livelihood part. We are not talking about employment and other things. We are not talking about employment and other things. What we are saying is a much bigger issue. In rural areas, as M.S. Swaminathan has pointed out in so many research papers he had written in recent times, farming, agriculture as a profession, is completely losing its charm among the young people. A farmer's son does not want to become a farmer. You can see a doctor's son would become a doctor, an engineer's son, again an engineer, an IAS officer's son, IAS officer, a cricketer's son, cricketer, but not a farmer's son. Why? Because this farmer does not want his children to undergo the same kind of problems, troubles and pains he had undergone. That is the reason why he wants his children to take up any other profession except farming. And still, in rural areas, major source of livelihood is still agriculture. But nobody wants to take up agriculture. This is the kind of a paradox that M.S. Swaminathan talks about. It is said that in rural areas, children of farmers do not get any marriage proposals because from their own community itself, women, they do not want to marry farmers. So socially, economically and otherwise, farming has lost its relevance, its charm, because of which, whatever may be the size of your land, whatever may be the amount of money you are earning from land, you don't want to tell others that you are a farmer. You don't want others to know that you are a farmer. You want to get out of it as quickly as possible. You want to come to urban areas, do anything, including begging, but you don't want to consider farming as your profession. So that is what, when the government comes out with a policy, the government should look at all these basic institutional weaknesses. Then only they can come out with long-term sustainable solutions. Everyone nowadays is talking about migrants issue, thanks to the fact that unfortunately most of them are have walked thousands of kilometers to reach their homes. But nobody would ask the question why and what are the reasons. This is one of the important reasons why it has become unsustainable. Another important reason is there are no jobs, no employment opportunities for people in rural areas. If you are illiterate or illiterate, the situation is the same. The irony here is that in the last 2 months, the demand for NREGA had gone up like anything. Sonia Gandhi, she had written an article in the newspaper saying that how creative and empathetic their government when they came out with this scheme called NREGA. Why do we call it an irony? This NREGA scheme had been created, it had come into existence to provide employment to those people who are distressed, economically depressed. When the demand for NREGA increases, it means that there is abject failure on the part of the government to create basic minimum employment for its citizens. We really don't know whether to celebrate this fact or to feel bad about it. Continuing with this, the jobs are not there, simply no jobs. If you are an illiterate, you can only do physical work, and most of the people in rural areas are illiterates only. And what kind of physical work they have? The only physical work they have is in working in farm, agriculture. When agriculture itself is suffering, where is the question of any providing jobs? On top of it, as we study in economics, there is huge amount of disguised unemployment in our agriculture. So, if you are an illiterate person, you will continue to remain jobless, either unemployed or will be part of disguised unemployment. On the other hand, if you are a literate person, the situation is much more worse for you. There are no jobs. Why? Because there are no industries in rural areas. There are no big businesses in rural areas. There is absolutely no service sector in rural areas. Employment is provided by either primary sector or secondary sector or a tertiary sector. Primary sector has completely collapsed. Agriculture, which is dominated by agriculture, it has completely collapsed. Industrial sector is absent. Service sector, they don't know even the meaning of service sector in rural areas. So where do they go? All those people, those especially who are literates, semi-literates or literates or fully literates, where do they go? They don't have an option but to migrate to urban areas. This is another reason why we find migration. Next, what are the other reasons why we find migration? Another important reason is, as Ambedkar has pointed out, as all of us know, Mahatma Gandhi and Ambedkar have completely radically opposite views about our villages. According to Ambedkar, our villages are the den of social evils, exploitation, untouchability, and all other traditions and customs whose basic objective is to exploit majority sections of society. This is the opinion of Ambedkar. On the other hand, Gandhi was a more optimist. He believed that villages would come together and rule themselves as part of his self-rule. Both their views are Gandhi is eternally optimistic, whereas Ambedkar too negative, too pessimistic. What is the reality? Reality is always in between. The reality is that still there are so many social evils, traditions and customs which refuse to recognize other people as human beings. So when people are migrating, they want to escape all these social evils, untouchability, discrimination, exploitation in the name of caste and religion. As you can see, in urban areas, nobody is bothered about these things, whereas entire rural life is dependent on these traditions and customs. So obviously, when people are migrating, they are migrating to escape from these social evils. They want others to recognize them as human beings, no more, no less, which is almost impossible in spite of 70 years of independence, which is almost impossible in India, one of the biggest failures of our development process. And of course, the reasons are many. Political parties continue to divide the society, fragment the society to create vote banks. That's a different thing. This is another reason why people are migrating in India. Next, what are the other reasons why they are migrating? Next important reason is in case of a woman. Again, being a traditional society, being a feudal society, being a patriarchal society, being a male dominated society, you don't expect women to get any kind of opportunities, to get any kind of livelihood on their own. They are always treated as secondary grade citizens. They will always be treated as secondary grade citizens in these male dominated societies. So the generations of women have suffered because of this. Thanks to the availability of information, the smartphones have completely radically transformed human life forever. So rural women also had come to know about what is happening in the rest of the world. They are also questioning, why don't we get the same kind of opportunities that people in other parts of the country are able to get? They are always raising very good questions, and they themselves had to find answers. And that is the reason why again they are migrating. Another reason why people are migrating. Next, what are the other reasons why people are migrating? Next important reason why they are migrating is absence of basic infrastructure facilities. When we talk about this, we are talking about physical and social infrastructure. Absence of basic infrastructure facilities in these rural areas. The physical infrastructure in the name of electricity, drinking water, roads, drainage facilities, then transportation facilities, communication facilities, social infrastructure in the form of education and health. These are completely absent. They are totally absent in our rural areas. Under the Saubhagya scheme and other schemes, the government has said that we have ensured 100% electrification. But this 100% electrification is a $1 million question. Is a $1 million question. Why? Because how many villages in our country have 24-hour electricity supply? India had become in the year 2018 power surplus country. We had also exported power to Bhutan. But in reality, at the ground level, how many villages, how many households in a village have 24-hour electricity supply? How many villages have good schools? How many villages have good health facilities? How many villages have safe drinking water, pipe drinking water, taps? How many of them have what we call all-weather roads? How many of them have transportation and facilities? So the life in rural areas has become unbearable, extremely difficult. You like your hometown very much, but it has become almost impossible for you to stay there. So people think that it is only distress migration. No, it is not only distress migration, that is a lack of employment opportunities. Even rich people who have access to some of these facilities are also migrating. Why? Because they want to empower themselves, develop themselves. They want to create more opportunities for themselves to showcase their skills and talent, expand their horizons, and to be part of developed societies. That is the reason why they are migrating. As we mentioned during the planning period, this migration had taken place because of these industrial towns, traditional industrial towns. And from where did this migration take place? Obviously from underdeveloped states. From 1991 onwards, after liberalization, this process of migration was much more dynamic, much more active. One of the important reasons why this migration had increased after 1991, as I said, both positively and negatively. Negatively, agriculture has stagnated. Negatively, the terms of trade. Please remember, all these were asked in our UPSC examination only. They will be asked in all 5 papers of general studies. The terms of trade for agriculture had turned negative. And positively, due to liberalization, more employment opportunities had come up in urban areas. Now the question is, where did they get these employment opportunities? Please remember, all those who are part of agriculture, they are illiterate and unskilled workers. All of them are illiterate and unskilled workers. What kind of employment opportunities they got in urban areas? Obviously, it has to be unskilled. And the only sector that provides employment to this unskilled person is construction, real estate. Real estate, construction sector. So, after 1991, India had seen huge amount of boom in this construction sector. And this boom was mostly seen in urban pockets of the country, especially metropolitan cities. Metropolitan cities. And again, as we mentioned earlier, if you look at all those migrants who were walking hundreds of kilometers, from where did they walk? What are the places? Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore. These are the places where they started walking. Why? Because, as we mentioned, this construction boom had taken place in these metropolitan cities. From there, it has spread to Tier 1 and Tier 2 towns also. So all these people have migrated. As we have mentioned, this unskilled labor, this unskilled and illiterate workers, the only place for them is this construction and real estate sector. There was huge demand and there was also huge supply, unlimited supply you can say. But again the problem here is that supply at any point of time is more than the demand. Supply at any point of time is more than the demand. So those who have studied economics, they know that when the supply is more than the demand, the price will always come down. When the supply is more than the demand, the price will always be less. That is what exactly happened to these people. So what happened here? When these workers migrated to the cities that we have mentioned, in the first place, what are the states from which they have migrated? UP and Bihar, according to government statistics, account for almost 70% of these migrant workers. 60 to 70% of these migrant workers, UP and Bihar. We must remember that these two are the most populated states in India. And we must also remember that these two states are the most backward states in India in terms of per capita income, standard of living and everything else. And these two are the most, or you can say, least industrialized states in India. The conditions are ripe for these people to migrate to other places in search of livelihood. And what are the other states? Again, all those states which are poor and backward, whether it is Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, Bengal, Odisha. All these are the states where we find migration of people from these states to the cities that we have mentioned. This is what we call interstate migration, migration between the states. Apart from this, we also have what is called intra-state migration within the state. Within the state, you can see people from backward regions migrating to developed places. And this kind of migration can have completely unanticipated consequences. Can you imagine that one of the consequences of this migration is, you will be surprised to know that one of the consequences of this migration is creation of states also, division of states also. For example, Andhra Pradesh state had come into existence in 1956 with Hyderabad as the capital. With Hyderabad as the capital. Being the capital, it attracted people from all backward regions of the state. And if you look at this, we are looking at the different consequences of this migration. What happened is that rich people from other regions of the state migrated to Hyderabad to become more rich. They started industries, they started factories, and poor people migrated to Hyderabad to find their livelihood. From 1990s onwards, thanks to the service sector, Hyderabad developed rapidly, had become one of the most happening cities in the country. And it was believed that this Hyderabad was in the grip of the migrants from the rest of the state. Please remember, it was only a single state. People of the state normally go to the capital. But people from Telangana felt that these migrants who had come from other land, that is Rayalaseema and coastal regions of Andhra Pradesh, started dominating their lives, started taking away their lives and demanded a separate state, which ultimately led to the division of the state of Andhra Pradesh into Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. This is what we say unanticipated consequences of migration. Please remember, this question was asked in our General Studies paper 1, 2 years back. Ironically, Andhra Pradesh was the first state to be divided on linguistic basis. Why we say ironically? Because it was also the first state to be divided again, in spite of having the same language spoken by all the people in the state. This is what happens sometimes can be with migration. Why? Because as we study in sociology, these migrants, wherever they go, they are very hardworking. Wherever they go, they are very hardworking because it is their livelihood that really matters. Automatically they become rich. When they become rich, they start controlling the natives, the local population. Then what happens here? Outsider versus son of the soil debate comes. This is where we have so much of problem in Assam right now. So these are all the different facets of migration. So please don't think that migrants are always very poor, backward, illiterate, and they are exploited. We have the other side of migration also, which we must also look into, because unless we look at the issue comprehensively from all dimensions, we cannot understand it. And maximum number of law and order problems are because of this only. Outsider versus son of the soil. That is the reason why recently you can see some of the state governments had come out with a law saying that 100% of the jobs should be reserved only for locals, whether it is Karnataka or Madhya Pradesh or Andhra Pradesh. So these are all unanticipated consequences. You feel that people from outside coming to you and taking away your jobs. You don't mind as long as they are working in low paid jobs. Please remember, this is not restricted to only India. Everywhere else in the world, the same problem can be seen. If you look at it, United States of America, Donald Trump, recently he had tightened immigration laws. He said that he would be cancelling H-1B visas for 6 months. United Kingdom had come out of European Union basically over this issue of migrants only. All over the world, it is a major problem. And go back further, Second World War. Why Germany? Why Hitler had become so popular in Germany during the time of Second World War, because he declared war on migrants in his own country. Those who are part of the Jewish population, they are very intelligent, hardworking. Automatically they had become owners of industrial organizations, factories in Germany. Native Germans were working in those organizations as workers and laborers. Hitler tapped this sentiment and he said that Germans belong to Aryan race. And as Aryans, they have the natural right to rule the entire world. They have the natural right to kill the Jewish population, which ultimately led to the Second World War. You can imagine the complexity of the problem here, migrants. So coming back here, as I have mentioned, the locals do not mind migrants coming and working in low paid, unskilled jobs. As long as they are doing it, they will take it. The moment migrants start taking away their jobs, especially in the service sector and other industrial sector, the local sentiments will be very high. You can see in Maharashtra, Raj Thackeray, the entire Shiv Sena, the birth of Shiv Sena, entire history of Shiv Sena, evolution of this Shiv Sena is against migrants. In 1960s, when Bal Thackeray started the Shiv Sena, it was against the Tamils who were running hotels and restaurants in Bombay. So as you can see here, the problem is not as simple as we think it is. So what exactly is this then? Let us try to analyze further. What exactly is this problem then? So broadly we can divide that into two parts. Problems of low skilled or unskilled, lowly paid workers. Illiterate. Second one is those who are educated, highly skilled and rich people. We have seen this problem now. That is the reason why, as I have mentioned, almost every political party in the country is trying to whip up these regional feelings, emotions and sentiments. Us versus others. Locals versus outsiders. This is the problem here. You believe that these people, you believe that outsiders are coming and taking away your jobs, your livelihood, your employment, your opportunities. So you think that they should be thrown out. They should be thrown out. That is the reason why in almost every state in India we find this kind of emotions and sentiments. Locals versus outsiders. Of course, the governments are not willing to recognize the problem unless the problem becomes extremely serious. After the problem becomes extremely serious, they will ignore it anyway. And what we have seen in the last 3 months is the problems of these people. unskilled, lowly paid, illiterate workers. Problems of these people. So what are the problems of these people? As we have mentioned earlier, after 1991, when these people migrated, most of them found employment in construction. It can be houses, it can be factories, it can be apartments, it can be roads, it can be highways, it can be flyovers. This is where maximum employment, you can say that almost 100%. Again, as I mentioned, supply at any point of time always exceeded demand. Supply at any point of time always exceeded demand, and the consequence is these migrant laborers are forced to live in extremely pitiable conditions. How this is done? The contractor will be there, what we call him the middleman. He is the middleman between these construction industry and the villages. He is a middleman. So these migrants will be in touch with the contractor, and the contractor will get all the necessary information about the demand for labor. And this contractor, like any other middleman, would exploit both of them. He would exploit both of them. He would quote a different wage to the construction company, and he would give different wage to the workers. Please remember that all of them are illiterate, backward, poor. They don't know anything. They are not in a position to bargain. Karl Marx can say anything. At the end of the day, Marxian thought is only a theory. In reality, it is not possible for them to revolt. It is very easy to talk about revolution, but it can never succeed. So these workers are literally at the mercy of the contractor. Unless they are in the good books of the contractor, they would not get any work. Unless they blindly sign the contract, there is no question of signing, giving only a thumb impression. Unless they give the thumb impression, they will not get any employment. These workers are like beggars, and beggars can never be choosers. These contractors, middlemen, are the ones who are ruthlessly exploiting. Everyone knows this, including the government. Of course, any government any government, whether it is central or state, any government is only interested in revenues. Please remember this. Any government, whether it is central or state, they are only concerned about one thing: how to extract as much revenue from the people as possible. Welfare of the people will be the last thing on their mind, if at all. When I say lost, it is not LAST, it is LOST. How to extract more money from everyone, whether you are a rich or poor person, the governments are only concerned about extracting more money. That is the reason we can see when the global crude prices have become negative. In India, they are touching a positive infinity. They are going up and up and up. 13 days continuously. The government keeps on increasing. Why? Because, as I said, at the end of the day, whatever the government says, I am not talking about political parties, I am talking about governments here. whether it is central government or state government. Sonia Gandhi had written a letter to Prime Minister asking the Prime Minister to relook at the crude prices, the petroleum prices. But what about her Congress governments? These petroleum prices are maximum in Mumbai, and Congress party is a coalition partner there. So you can understand the hypocrisy of governments and political parties. That's a different thing. So coming back here, every government looks at all these sectors, construction sector, real estate and everything else, as a means to maximize their revenues, how to increase different layers of GST from 7 to 8 to 9, and how to extract as much money from them as possible. The last thing in their mind is the welfare of these workers. Unfortunately, in the last 25 years or so, no government study has focused on these workers. For the first time, economic survey 2 years back spoke about migrants, and that too at a peripheral level. It had taken the internal migration in India. On the basis of the train journeys, it had calculated that around 14 crore people are migrants working in other states. Otherwise, no state government, or for that matter union government, really bothered to conduct a study about the lives of these migrants. Why? Because, as we have said, poor people in a democracy can never raise their voice, should never raise their voice. For the governments, they are deaf and dumb, poor people. What are the reasons why they have never become part of the welfare administration of either central or state governments? Why they could not become part of welfare administration of either central or state governments? What are the reasons why? There are many reasons. First and foremost, political. These migrant workers, they don't have any voting rights. In those places where they work, they don't have any voting rights because their voter ID cards in different states. You are a migrant worker working in Bangalore and you are from Bihar. Your voter ID card is there in Bihar and you are working in Bangalore. Now what happens here? If there are elections are held to Karnataka State Assembly, obviously no one cares about you. Political parties will treat you as untouchables. They are the new untouchables. Had Ambedkar been alive, he would have fought for them again. They are the new untouchables. Nobody is really bothered about them. Nobody is really bothered about their conditions, their life, their education, their health, nothing. In your home state Bihar, when elections are held, again your politicians are not concerned. Why? Because you will not go to Bihar and vote. You will not go to Bihar and vote in elections. So, in the state where you are working, you are invisible. You are invisible. In the state, from the state where you are from, you are ignored. Please remember, entire policy making in India, this is what we study in public administration. entire policy making in India is dependent only on politics. It is only about politics. It is about winning elections. It is about retaining power. So the 14 crore workers whom we are talking about here, these 14 crore workers are literally orphans. So whenever elections are held, you can take out this. That means almost 20% of the electorate will not vote at any point of time. So when they do not matter to political parties and the governments in the most crucial aspect, that is elections, why should government should take care of them? You can say that the central government, what is the central government doing? Union government. Again, in India, elections are held to parliament and state assemblies separately. As I mentioned, in the assembly elections, they don't matter at all. Unfortunately, during parliamentary elections also, they don't matter at all. Why? Because in India, parliament elections, the outcomes are decided on the basis of two things. First one is a wave in favor of a political party or a leader. If you look at since independence, it is this wave only. A complete dominance of a political party. 1971, Indira Gandhi, and last year, Narendra Modi. When you have this kind of wave, nothing really matters. You are a migrant or a human being, it does not really matter, because leader commands so much of awe, so much of popularity that the real issues would be royally ignored. That is what happens. Second, in India, when there is no visible wave in favor of any political party, in India, elections to parliament are nothing but elections to 28 state assembly elections. Every state would vote according to the local factors, even though they are national elections. If you look at this, either way, migrants are completely out of a picture. Either way, you don't find them at all. You don't find these migrants coming into the picture at all. Either way. Unfortunately, this is what happened since 1991 in India. We are talking about 1991 because that was the year when we liberalized our economy. So the most important reason why migrants are routinely ignored is political factors. They are not a part of either a problem or any solution also. Second one is economic. So what are we saying here? After 1991, what we have witnessed is huge amount of increase in the revenues of state governments, thanks to increase in the per capita incomes of the people, increase in GDP, thanks to imposition of new taxes like GST, exponential increase in the revenues of the state governments. What did every state government has done? Every state government had introduced hundreds of welfare schemes. they started spending money lavishly, hundreds of welfare schemes, spending lakhs of crores of rupees. But what is the main problem here? All these schemes are available to their own citizens. What about the migrants? Forget about citizens. They are not even considered as human beings also. Please remember, as long as they stay in the state, these migrants are paying hundreds of different taxes. You must remember that India is, again I would say ironically, it is one of the poorest countries in the world, and at the same time one of those countries where tax rates are highest in the world. For example, if you look at petrol, the taxes that we are imposing on petrol are 280%. The next country is around 60%. European countries, you can imagine. And these petroleum taxes, as we say, they are indirect taxes, which are highly regressive. Every state government imposes so many taxes, indirect taxes. And who will be paying all those indirect taxes? These are migrants. As long as you stay in a state, you will be paying all those taxes. You are not paying income tax, but you will be paying all other taxes. You are eating food means you are paying tax. You are wearing clothes means you are paying tax. You are traveling means you are paying tax. You are buying medicines means you are paying tax. So these state governments, what are they doing? They are getting huge amount of revenues from these migrants in the form of taxes. But they don't have to pay a single, they don't have to spend a single rupee on them for their welfare. Literally they don't have to. Why? Because they are only the sources of income, but not items of expenditure for the state governments. That is the reason why you can see nowadays all these states are repeatedly requesting other states, please ensure that all those migrants come back, because it's a win-win situation for them. These migrants are not eligible for Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, housing scheme for poor people in urban areas as well as rural areas. They are not eligible for Ayushman Bharat. They are not eligible for any other scheme, because every state has its own welfare schemes, and they don't even get the ration also, because we don't have this one country one ration card. So these migrants simply are not there in the account books of the state governments. They don't exist. They exist only for the purpose of generating revenues for the state governments. This is another reason. Next, thing is these migrants, what about their housing? What about education for their children? What about health? This is where again complete failure of the central and state governments. Neither the central government nor state government had come out with any labor laws to protect these migrants. For example, when they work in this construction industry, they work in hazardous conditions, extremely dangerous, highly deplorable conditions. There is no job security, no pension, no number of hours of work, no bonus, no insurance, nothing. Why? Because the construction lobby has ensured that none of these reforms are implemented. And then, most importantly, child labor. If you happen to see, when these workers, migrant workers are walking hundreds of kilometers, you can see them, children are also working with the families. Why? Because most of these children are working. No government, as I said, either state or central, is concerned about them. Children, no government is concerned. Why? Because, again, political reasons, simple. Because children don't have any voting rights. They can't vote. They don't vote. Because of which they don't exist for governments. Everything is about your voting rights. So this is another reason. They don't have any of these things. Accidents keep on taking place. Laborers, these workers, keep on dying. State governments routinely announce compensation packages. For every worker who lost his or her life, the state government will pay a compensation of 1 lakh rupees, 2 lakh rupees, washes off its hands in the entire crime. That is what happens. Please remember, all these questions were asked in our ethics paper. This is what they do. And once they announce the compensation, 99% the money will never be going into the pockets of the people. That's a different thing, because neither media nor people are interested to see whether they have received the compensation also. The matter ends there till another action takes place after a few days, and the same tamasha will be repeated. So this is what. And then, if there is any law and order problem in the city, who will be blamed? These migrants only. All the time, the migrants will be blamed for any law and order problem. So what is the situation of migrants here vis-a-vis the state governments? State governments are in a situation wherein state governments, they say that heads I win, tails you lose. Either way, it is the state governments that win. They don't care for them. They don't recognize their existence. They don't think about them. They don't have to provide any kind of welfare schemes. They don't have to take care of their families and children. On the other hand, they will be contributing to your GDP. All these construction projects, all these highway projects, all these infrastructure projects would come to a standstill if these migrant laborers were not to be there. But who requires, which side requires the other one more? For these migrant laborers, it is a question of life and death. If they don't get this employment, they will die of hunger, because in their home state the conditions are so bad that they find these conditions to be extremely good, which give them 2 square meals a day, no more and no less. They find these things better. That is the reason why they suffer in silence. That is the reason why they walk hundreds of kilometers. Now, the interesting question that we have to raise here is, if the migrants are so much aligned to the cities where they are working, what is the reason why they left those places and started walking back to their hometowns, hundreds and thousands of kilometers? As all of us know, the central government had announced this lockdown, complete lockdown, in the third week of March, all of a sudden. For good or bad, our central government always believes in war strategies. What is a war strategy? You try to dismantle your opposition through shock and awe campaign. That is what our central government does with its own citizens, where it is demonetization, where it is implementation of GST. They were announced all of a sudden when neither the government nor the people were ready for it. But this lockdown was much more dramatic, except that it was full of tragedy. When the central government announced this lockdown, it was based on the assumption that everyone, all 130 crore population, would stay where they are. Central government believed that they had to switch on their television sets and watch Ramayana and Mahabharata to pass their time. And it never thought about those families, lakhs and millions of families who depend on their day-to-day wages. If you don't earn today, you will go into, you will not have any food to eat for tomorrow. He did not think about them. And the most important issue here is, it never looked into these migrants. How will they survive? As I have mentioned in the beginning, these 14 crore migrants were never part of any policy analysis in the last 27 years, except 2 years back, Economic Survey has mentioned about them in some other sense, not in terms of their livelihood and everything else. So, when the government announced this lockdown, it has announced this lockdown for a period of 3 weeks. And there was complete lockdown. As critics pointed out, it was the most comprehensive, brutal, inhuman lockdown. Nowhere else in the world this kind of lockdown was announced. You cannot question the intentions of the government. Government felt that corona would be a much bigger problem than economy. So people took into their stride, middle class people. But what about these poor people? These migrants suddenly had come to face the reality of life within few days. What is the reality? The reality is that they are orphans. Nobody is bothered about them. The contractor had disappeared. The construction industry owner had completely disowned them. it disowned them. The places where they are staying, the house owners had asked them to leave. They don't have any food to eat. What it is said is that the biggest fear anybody encounters in his life is insecurity regarding future, uncertainty. The biggest fear is insecurity and uncertainty. Suddenly, the lives of these migrants, which were stable if not prosperous, had become uncertain and insecure. State governments had no plans to take care of them. Central government had directed the state governments. In fact, central government had washed up its hands by saying that it is the responsibility of the state governments to take care of these migrants. They should be taken to relief camps and they should be taken care of. As all of us know, when it comes to welfare administration, our bureaucracy is the worst in the entire world. When it comes to regulatory administration, they are the best. Our bureaucracy has implemented this lockdown so effectively, especially the police, because it is very easy. If you come out of your house, you will be beaten, which our police are very good at. But if you are staying in the house and if I have to take care of you, that is where they are the worst. These relief camps are worse than prison cells. They don't have water, they don't have toilets, there is no food, extremely hot and humid, and added to that mosquitoes. State governments have said that we cannot provide any relief, it is beyond our means. That is when these migrants had taken the decision, drastic decision, to walk to their hometowns. Why? Because they had lost confidence in the state. They had lost faith in the state, in the ability of the state to take care of their problems, in the willingness of the state to treat them as human beings. They had completely lost. Here when we say state, we are including central and state governments here. Central government in the whole process has completely disappeared. It has completely disassociated itself from all these things, saying that it is the responsibility of the state governments. The only responsibility of the central government is to impose lockdown. Let the people die if they want. It is their wish. Central government had completely washed its hands here. Central government is more interested in coming out with corona figures, saying that we have controlled so much, the spread of corona. And the state governments are completely clueless regarding how to tackle this migrant issue. This is when they started walking hundreds of kilometers, thousands of kilometers. Why? Because no facilities are there. Everything was completely shut out. And the key issue you have to remember here is that this walking to their hometown is not happening for the first time. That is what you have to remember. Earlier also they used to walk. What did they do? They would walk for say 6 to 7 hours, and they would work in the roadside dhabas and everywhere. They will earn some money, they will have their food, they will take rest, and they will walk next day. So it is earning livelihood and also reaching home. Now what happened now? Everything is closed. When they are walking, they don't have any place to hide. On the other hand, when they are walking, in the name of regulatory administration, the state police took brutal action against these migrant workers. They were mercilessly beaten. They were lathi charged. And they were again thrown into those relief camps. If you come out of the camp, you will be shot dead also. Why? Because every state government wants to prove a point to others that they have imposed this lockdown very strictly. This is what happened. And in spite of this, they started walking. They realized that if they walk on the highways, they might be beaten. They might be again sent back to those relief camps. So they started walking on railway tracks in the night time, so that they would not catch the attention of the police. Unfortunately, as you can see, they died, some of them. And this is where we have to talk about one of the most important organs of the state, that is judiciary. Indian judiciary, unfortunately, does not carry much of credibility, especially in times of crisis. In 1975, when emergency was imposed, it has endorsed emergency. It had become what is called committed judiciary. Whenever executive in India becomes powerful, automatically judiciary becomes subordinated to executive. Here, unfortunately, in this entire migrant crisis, our judiciary has failed to come out with a timely response. As we say, poor people in our country are always orphans. Nobody would come to their rescue, even God also. Judiciary simply failed to come. Judiciary went blindly by the words of the executive when the central government has said that we are taking care of them. How they are taking care of them? They are ensuring that all these migrants will have a peaceful death. That is what they are doing. Why? Because, as we said, at the end of the day, poor people don't count much in a democracy. No other country in the world you can see these kind of things happening. People walking on the tracks and being killed by trains. Still, it has not shaken the conscience of the policy makers in our country. None of our leaders have really come out and expressed shock. Why? Because India as a society has lost its conscience, morals, values and ethics long time back, when we had become what we call a materialistic society after 1991. We have completely become inward in our approach. We are not concerned about anyone else except our own welfare, safety and prosperity. That is the reason why, when these thousands of lakhs and millions of people are walking, neither the state governments nor the central government had shown any kind of mercy on those people. On the other hand, they were brutally suppressed, like in a colonial state, like in an imperial government. The worst kind of migrant crisis. The country had seen worst kind of migrant crisis after independence. That was forced when the country was divided. But this is man-made, completely what you call it as a man-made disaster. And they started walking back. And what did the governments do? This is where we talk about disaster management. For disaster management to be successful, you need to be proactive, you need to be dynamic, you need to be empathetic, you need to be humane. Unfortunately, our bureaucracy, neither at the lowest level nor in the topmost level, possess any of these qualities. They are rule oriented, they are impersonal, they are value neutral, and most importantly, they don't have ethics. So nobody really bothered about them for a very long period of time. As I said, judiciary also was criminally silent during this entire crisis. Civil society organizations started providing NGOs, providing some kind of relief. But when you are talking about 14 crores, the relief is provided to few thousand people, which is neither sufficient nor effective. Media, unfortunately, another problem with our country is that media is completely controlled by big business houses, which have very close and intimate relations with those who are in positions of power. Whichever political party is in power, they had no option but to dance to the tunes of the ruling political party at the center. Media also has completely conveniently ignored. Ultimately, the problem had become so severe that the central government was forced to wake up to the sad reality. But even then, when it had woken up, it was not willing. It was looking everything from the perspective of what is called cost benefit analysis. So it has said that all these migrants, the government would be running special trains for these migrants. All these migrants would be sent back to their houses. Only thing is that they must buy the tickets, and they should buy the tickets online only. Look at this policy, how ridiculous it can be. You are expecting the poor, backward, illiterate migrants to carry what you call smartphones and also book the tickets online. Obviously, you know how many of them would benefit. And how many trains they were running? If the demand is for 1 lakh, they are running 10 trains. Obviously, this measure was also unsuccessful. In spite of the fact that the government has run so many trains, still we have seen these pictures of people traveling and then road accidents taking place. So what the government could have done differently? Because tomorrow, as part of case studies, if you are asked what could have been the response of the government, what the government could have done differently. When you talk about proactive policies of the government and what the government could have done differently in this particular situation, lockdown, instead of announcing the lockdown all of a sudden, the government could have given at least 1 week time. Please remember, when the lockdown was announced, the number of cases in India were in hundreds only, and mostly those cases were from those who have come from foreign countries. So there was no domestic threat of corona. The government could have given at least 1 week time for people to travel, and most importantly, the railways should have run free trains. The government is there for the welfare of the people. You cannot be looking at cost benefit analysis you cannot be looking at cost benefit analysis always when you come out with policies. Government could have said that all those migrants, you don't require your Aadhaar, you don't require anything. As long as you are there physically present, that is more than enough. The government could have run these free trains. As we have seen, almost 60-70% of the migrants are from UP and Bihar. So run the trains from all these states free. Every day run 200, 300, 1000 trains. In 1 week, you could have ensured that people would have reached their destinations. Then you could have imposed lockdown forever. Nobody would have objected to it. This is one thing the government could have done, should have done, had the government been proactive, dynamic and creative. And most importantly, had it had some kind of values or ethics. Or, okay, let us assume that the government did not anticipate this problem, which is perfect. After 3 weeks of lockdown, initially the lockdown was announced for 3 weeks. The government could have revised its policy. It could have relaxed this lockdown. Even after 3 weeks also, the cases were only in thousands. Because by this time, this marathon walking had started. The government could have relaxed for 1 week the lockdown, and it should have run free trains for all these people. Free trains from the places where they are working to their hometowns, which they should have done. On the other hand, what we have seen, fight among the central and state governments. Central government saying that we will give 80%, state government says that we will give 15%, and the passengers should bear 10%. Is this some kind of a game our policymakers want to play, which unfortunately had become a tragic game at the end of the day? Imagine people dying. Unfortunately, whether the state or central governments, they were more interested in the entire period on reducing the number of cases, because they want to tell the rest of the world that in spite of having 130 crore population, thanks to our policy measures, thanks to our dynamic leadership, thanks to our visionary leaders, we were able to control corona. Of course, in the process, if people die of hunger and walking, so be it. This is how policies are formulated in India, and this is where the problem is. Proactively, they should have done this. At least after 3 weeks, they should have given relaxation for 1 week, and they should have run free trains. Because let us accept the fact that no state government has either willingness or ability to run these relief camps, for the simple reason that any amount of money spent on these migrant laborers will be considered unproductive, inefficient and wasteful, because they are not going to vote for you in the coming elections. If you have money, you will spend that money only on your citizens, not on other people. That is unfortunate reality here. That is what the central government has failed to understand. They could never understand. So this is what they should have done. Coming back, what could be the long-term solution to the problem here? First of all, as we have mentioned, these migrant laborers have lost faith in the system. They had lost faith in the governments. They had lost faith in their employers. So first thing is that they should be brought back. Now that they had migrated to their hometowns, the governments as well as the construction industry is requesting them to come back, saying that we will take care of you. And during this lockdown period, some of the state governments acted in a completely inhuman manner, brutal. Karnataka state government, coming under the influence of its construction lobby, had stopped running trains also. Why? Because there the construction lobby has said that if you start running the trains and all these laborers would go back, they would not come back again. So stop running the trains, let them stay here. If they want to die, let them die. If they have to die, let them die here only. That is how inhuman our state governments can be. And unfortunately, during the entire period, the central government was like what you call Dhritarashtra, completely blind. As 2 days back, I think in Indian Express, Pratap Bhanu Mehta, he had written a beautiful article where there is a complete absence of leadership in the country at this critical time, critical juncture. Central government had failed to come out with proper directions for the state governments during the entire period. And the state governments were acting completely in self-interest. So the present situation is such that reverse migration had to take place. All those people who went back, they should come back to the cities again. Will they come back? Let us assume that they will be coming back, because as I said, at the end of the day, if they stay back in their hometowns, they will die of hunger, poverty. The first reason, most important reason why they had migrated to faraway places is because of absence of livelihood. The central government can provide employment under NREGA for a few days. After that, they will also raise their hands and defeat. So they have to come back. If they come back, who can ensure their safety, security and livelihood? That is where both the central and state government should be proactive. The government must immediately come out with labor reforms. Unfortunately, labor reforms in India is a much abused word. Either these labor reforms are seen from the perspective of a capitalist, that is industrialist, or seen from the perspective of a radical left trade. But nobody is concerned about daily wage laborers. These labor reforms are mostly restricted to industrial sector. Real estate and construction are out of it. So the government must come out with a proper implementable reforms, like ensuring basic livelihood for these people. As long as these migrants are working in these cities and states, they must be eligible for all the welfare schemes implemented by the state government. The central government had come out with this one country, one ration card. Ensuring portability of ration card will be a difficult thing. But why should we restrict it only to food? Why can't we extend it to education, health, housing and livelihood? As long as they are working, treat them as your own citizens, because they are contributing to your GDP. They are contributing to your growth and development. Treat them as your citizens. Give the ration cards of the state. Treat them as your citizens for all welfare and developmental purposes. Whatever the welfare and developmental schemes implemented by state government should be eligible for these migrants. And it is not asking for more. Why? Because they are also contributing to your growth and development. More than the natives, these are the ones who are working hard and contributing to your growth and development. So it is the moral responsibility of the state governments. Wherever you are working, every state has hundreds of developmental schemes, welfare schemes. All of them should be eligible. And every state must have a separate department or a ministry for only these migrants. At the district level also, in the district collector's office, there must be a separate department and ministry to find out on a real-time basis how many migrants are working, from what other state they had come from, for how long they have been living there, for how long they will be there. The entire information should be updated on a real-time basis. And as long as they are there, they should get all the benefits. Their children should be getting free education in the state government schools. They should be getting free health facilities in state government hospitals, like any other citizen of the state. They should be treated as citizens of the state for all purposes, these migrants. Then only you can solve the problem. Otherwise, any amount of reforms which we talk about, and of course, the government should be sincere and serious about protecting the lives of these construction workers. Make sure that every worker who is working there has insurance. Make sure that women are paid at par with men. Make sure that the working hours are defined. Make sure that these middlemen are removed. These middlemen, they are removed. They are the ones who are brutally exploiting the industry as well as the workers. Make sure that any kind of accident, the responsibility should be exclusively on the shoulders of the contractors or the employers. Make sure that children are not employed in these construction industries. Make sure that the schemes of the government, right to education, are fully implemented for these migrant laborers, especially the children. And make sure that you are implementing labor reforms. This is how you can overcome the problem. From a much larger perspective, we cannot wish away this problem of migration. As long as the development is highly skewed in favor of urban areas, as long as we have this uneven, unbalanced growth, as long as there is an absence of sustainable growth, the problem is going to be there. And most importantly, as long as we don't treat agriculture as an industry, the problem will be there. So what is required is multidimensional reforms. You must make agriculture more productive, more desirable, more attractive, as MS Swaminathan has pointed out. You must make sure that when people are migrating, the state governments are taking care of those migrants. Ultimately, as we have mentioned in the beginning, Indian state is always extremely weak and inefficient when it comes to welfare administration. You must improve the capabilities of our administrators. You must make our politicians empathetic to the problems of these migrants. This can be done only when the reforms are implemented. That is what the government should be doing. Otherwise, like any other problem that comes up, like any other issue that crops up, it will be short-lived. After 1 or 2 months, another major problem comes up, and this migrants issue will be going back into the back pages of newspapers. Already nobody is talking about them thanks to this Indo-China war or Indo-China conflict. Let us hope that this issue will remain in the minds of policymakers, and they will be able to come out with long-term solutions on the basis of one important value that we always talk about and cherish: empathy. They must be able to feel the sufferings and troubles of these migrants so that they can come out with effective policies. Otherwise, our political parties and the leaders would only pay lip service. You can come out with any number of yojanas, Krishi Kalyan, Garib Kalyan Yojana. I don't remember all the schemes. Yesterday our finance minister had said that they would be allocating 50,000 crores. These are only what we call, peripheral measures at best, and at worst they will never be successful. Try to find out the roots of the problem, think about the factors contributing, come out with innovative solutions. I think this is what the essence of the entire issue of migration. As I have mentioned, it will be asked in 4 papers of GS as well as essay. If you have any doubts, as I said, you can come up with your doubts on our Telegram group. I will try to answer. Thank you very much.